And welcome to the statewide online public meeting hosted by PennDOT and the Pennsylvania State Transportation Commission. My name is Leslie Richards, and I'm the Secretary of Transportation and the State Transportation Commission Chair. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening to participate in our biannual online public meeting. This is your opportunity to learn, share your thoughts and concerns, and get involved in the transportation planning process. The feedback we receive from you tonight and over the next month and a half will be used to inform the update of the 2021 12-year transportation program. During the last public comment period, we had 250 people register for the online public meeting. If you participated in our last meeting, welcome back. If you are with us for the first time, welcome to the conversation. It's so important that we hear from you so you can tell us about your transportation needs, concerns, and priorities. Your input is a vital step in the planning process we use to provide a safe and efficient transportation network that serves our citizens and visitors of the Commonwealth. Tonight, I am joined by PennDOT's Deputy Secretary of Planning, Jim Ritzman, State Transportation Commissioner George Corey, and PennDOT's Communications Director, Aaron Waters-Tressat. Aaron will be moderating the question portion of our meeting. So tonight marks an important milestone in the upcoming 2021 12-year program update. The 12-year program outlines PennDOT's next 12 years of transportation projects. The first step in the update process is to evaluate the performance of the transportation system. This evaluation is captured in the 2019 Transportation Performance Report. Tonight, we will discuss some of the results with you. Again, we need your feedback. Public participation is crucial to the overall success of our transportation planning process on the statewide level as well as the regional level. Your input helps us see how we can best meet your transportation needs. After the presentation, we will open the floor to answer your questions. We will respond to as many of your questions as we can in the time we have available. If your question is not answered tonight, please look for all questions and answers to be posted at a later date on our website, talkpatransportation.com. To submit a question, look for a button designated for questions on the platform you are using, either the webinar or Facebook Live. Our support team will monitor those feeds throughout the meeting. Again, please submit your questions at any time. Now, to discuss the role of the State Transportation Commission, I would like to welcome Commissioner George Corey.
Thank you, Secretary Richards, and good evening. The State Transportation Commission, also known as the STC, is comprised of 15 members and serves as PennDOT's Board of Directors. The STC was actually established by Act 120 in 1970, which is the same act that established the Department of Transportation. The Commission is comprised of members from across the Commonwealth with various transportation backgrounds. As an example, I'm a representative and a member of, a resident of Center County. I'm a former PennDOT district engineer, and I have 35 years, actually more than that, of transportation experience. The other members of our commission also bring a broad background of transportation experience to the table and are from geographic locations throughout Pennsylvania. The commission is responsible for providing an evaluation of the transportation system, and I think you're going to hear more about that from Jim Ritzman. from our biennial report called the Transportation Performance Report. We also provide policy-driven guidance to the department on the completion of the 12-year program. Very honestly, our mission is to provide a safe and efficient transportation program for the citizens of Pennsylvania. The 12-year program is multimodal. It addresses cars and trucks. It addresses bicycles and pedestrians, air travel, rail travel, and also all of the infrastructure that goes along with those various modes of transportation. As Secretary mentioned earlier, tonight we are hopeful to get your input, your thoughts on the needs of transportation both locally and across the Commonwealth. Your input is very important for us to be able to prioritize our limited resources so that we can provide the best transportation program that we can. I look forward to hearing your comments tonight, and hopefully if you have any questions that I might be able to answer doing that too. So thank you, and hope to hear from you later.
Thank you, Commissioner Corey. We launched our online survey on March 11th. If you haven't taken the survey, please do so. The survey will be available through April 26th on talkpatransportation.com. In addition to transportation priority and budgeting exercises in the survey, there's also a mapping tool for you to use to make sure we understand the nature and location of any transportation issue you may encounter. During the last outreach process, we received nearly 4,000 transportation concerns. And for the first time ever, participants received current information about our projects already on the transportation program. As a result, survey participants said that 520 of their concerns were already targeted by PennDOT's planned projects. This is a great example of an immediate return on the investment you make in this statewide transportation planning process. Also, in the last survey, the public told us road pavement and traffic flow were their biggest transportation priorities throughout Pennsylvania. This data was directly reflected in the 2019 12-year program. Based on our data, our planning partners were also able to pinpoint transportation priorities in their areas and include information in their regional transportation improvement programs and, in some cases, their long-range plans. The valuable data we extract from this survey is priceless, not only to PennDOT and to the STC, but also to our planning partners. On behalf of the department, I would like to again thank everyone who participates. At this point, more than 2,000 surveys have already been submitted. Now we welcome PennDOT Deputy Secretary of Planning, Jim Ritzman, to highlight the 2019 Transportation Performance Report, released this past February. If you have not read the report, I encourage you to do so. The full report is available on the STC website. Come on up, Jim.
Thank you, Secretary Richards. The Transportation Performance Report depicts how PennDOT's transportation system is performing. Pretty straightforward. The report focuses on 5 key focus areas: safety, mobility, preservation, accountability, and funding. There are 44 performance measures that are actually scored in the first 4 focus areas. The 5th area is more of a conversation, discussion, observation area, and there's no scoring involved in those 9 categories. Let's take a closer look at how we did, beginning with safety. Safety is the highest transportation priority at PennDOT. Both the number of roadway crashes and impaired driving fatalities continue to decline, along with serious injuries from crashes. However, there is always room for improvement. One life lost is one too many. Drivers are a big part of the safety solution. Distracted driving is on the rise and a major cause of serious crashes and traffic fatalities. Work zone safety is another area of concern, not only for highway workers, but motorists alike. Unfortunately, over the past few years, crashes and fatalities in work zones have increased. Looking back, in November 2012, the Transportation Advisory Committee and the State Transportation Commission published a Cameras in Work Zones study, which was one of the first documents that advocated for legislation for automated speed enforcement in work areas. Move forward a few years, in October of 2018, new legislation was passed in Pennsylvania that allows automated speed enforcement cameras in work areas on the Turnpike, on Pennsylvania's interstate highways, and on other federal aid highways in a 5-year pilot project. We're also looking to improve bicycle and pedestrian safety. In 2017, 150 pedestrian fatalities occurred in Pennsylvania. Bicycle fatalities also spiked to a number not seen since 2010. We are dedicated to addressing this issue and providing a safer transportation system for bicyclists and pedestrians. The second focus area is mobility. Moving people and goods safely and efficiently is vital to our quality of life. We accommodate more traffic on existing highways through transportation system operations improvements, such as improved traffic signals and other smart technology. The use of our traveler information platforms continues to grow and provide valuable updates to travelers through emails, social media updates, and 511pa.com. We are working to improve traffic incident management with our involvement in the Pennsylvania Traffic Incident Management Enhancement Program, also known as PennTime. The goal of PennTime is to reduce highway incident clearance times and improve first responder safety while keeping traffic moving. PennDOT Safety Service Patrol also provides free assistance to motorists on major highways around Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Harrisburg, and the Lehigh Valley to clear incidents quickly and reduce congestion. And we're starting a new service patrol in Berks County this month. Freight movement is growing steadily in Pennsylvania, including water port freight. The Port of Philadelphia has experienced substantial growth in containerized cargo, which has had a positive economic impact. We also established the Pennsylvania Intermodal Cargo Incentive Program to maintain and attract new containerized cargo to the Port of Philadelphia. Freight is also moved by rail and tractor-trailer. This is very important to those of us who appreciate getting packages delivered on time. Our third focus area is preservation, and it involves maintaining Pennsylvania's vast transportation infrastructure, including bridges and pavement conditions. PennDOT is directly responsible for nearly 40,000 miles of roadway and roughly 25,000 bridges. The number of state-owned bridges rated poor is now less than 3,000 for the first time in more than 20 years. Projects like the Rapid Bridge Replacement Program will have replaced 558 bridges throughout the Commonwealth. In Pennsylvania, 6,400 bridges are owned and maintained by counties or municipalities. These bridges that are over 20 feet have improved in recent years, with the number rated poor now dropping under 2,000. This is a 10% improvement over the past 5 years. We are helping local partners further address this issue through bridge bundling programs to help save time and resources. Our local partners are also supported through Act 89 of 2013, which allowed counties to implement a $5 fee for local use on vehicle registrations. 23 counties participate and have used this funding to improve their local infrastructure. In addition to investing in bridges, we continue to improve our roadways. Pennsylvania's roadway network is roughly the same size as New York, New Jersey, and New England's roadway networks combined. Our Road Maintenance and Preservation Program, also known as Roadmap, began in 2017 and allowed us to invest more than $2 billion in roadway maintenance and highway and bridge capital projects over the next 10 years. Happy first day of spring. You may have already noticed that our crews are hard at work addressing pothole repairs. PennDOT has prioritized $22.3 million for pothole repairs through June 30th. Our fourth focus area is accountability. That means making the most of every dollar available to provide a safe, efficient, and accessible transportation system, modernizing technologies, materials, and practices, forming beneficial partnerships, tracking performance, and collaborating with communities are some of the ways we continue to enhance resource management and efficiency with greater impacts. Through programs like the Governor's Office of Transformation, Innovation, Management, and Efficiency, or GoTime, PennDOT saved almost $22 million in fiscal year 2017-18. These are funds that are reinvested into our operations. We are also working with other agencies to identify opportunities to share resources and services. For example, planned service exchanges with the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission, such as facility and equipment usage, truck washing, trash removal, are valued at more than $115,000 annually from 2018 through 2021. Statewide transit performance is another example of accountability performance. When comparing statewide transit fare revenues with operating expenses, Pennsylvania has the 8th best in the nation. This reflects community support of public transit and sound management. Funding is our final focus area and is an essential foundation for transportation performance. We carefully manage the Commonwealth's $9.68 billion transportation budget to prioritize improvements for safe and efficient travel. Although there are risks to funding, we take measures to proactively analyze those risks and prepare for the future. Secretary Richards is going to elaborate further on this area. I've been honored to share the 2019 Transportation Performance Report summary with you, encourage you to read the report, and I wouldn't even call it a report. If you take a look at it on the website, you'll notice that it's a storyboard. It's very entertaining. You look at a particular area, you click on an area, and it leads you to additional information. It's really worth taking the time to check out, so please do. I'm looking forward to answering your questions as well this evening, and thank you for allowing me to speak. Secretary Richards.
Thank you, Deputy Secretary Ritzman. As Jim mentioned, we are keenly aware of the looming threats to transportation funding on the federal and state levels. The Risks of Transportation Funding study was recently published by the Transportation Advisory Committee and the State Transportation Commission. You can find a copy on the State Transportation Commission's website, talkpatransportation.com. The funding study identifies the threat to transportation funds and estimates the resulting impacts of the Commonwealth's transportation system. A cumulative $18.5 billion is at risk over the next 12 years. To put that in perspective, please note that the total value of our current 12-year program is almost $64 billion. A 29% cut to the program would severely curtail the progress we have made in fixing our roadways and bridges and providing accessible transit in Pennsylvania. Our transit providers are experiencing the effects of the most immediate transportation risk. Due to private litigation against the Pennsylvania Turnpike, $450 million in legislated annual payments have been delayed from the Turnpike to PennDOT. Currently, many transit providers are already delaying needed projects, and this summer, transit services may be affected as well. The Risks to Funding study also notes the potential insolvency of the Federal Highway Trust Fund at the end of next summer that could reduce Pennsylvania's federal funding for highways, bridges, and transit by more than half. While further exacerbating the transit funding issue, highway and bridge work will be reduced at a time when we have overwhelming needs for our aging interstates. These funding risks are in addition to the transportation cost pressures that Pennsylvania is currently experiencing, especially the $125 million in damage caused this year alone due to flooding and landslides in 2018. As the Keystone State, Pennsylvania must prepare now for these risks to transportation funding, so our state can continue to support a modern and efficient transportation system for the long term. Predicting the future of transportation funding is complex. PennDOT, the STC, and our partners continue to work hard to stay ahead of the issue and ensure your safety and transportation needs are met. One way we do this is through programs such as PennDOT Connects. PennDOT Connects concentrates on working with local governments, regional planning partners, and PennDOT district staff during early project coordination to help achieve both better communities and better transportation. Since 2016, we have coordinated with more than 750 municipalities and discussed more than 1,850 projects. Greater, earlier collaboration in many cases has resulted in better projects and improved schedule coordination. We are also improving both safety and mobility with automated and connected vehicle technology. This life-saving technology is important because 94% of crashes are attributed to human error. Today, many people are also facing mobility challenges. PA developed an automated vehicle policy so we can work together with industry and testers throughout the Commonwealth, making sure we move forward together. The policy provides guidelines to hold industry and testers accountable. Together, we are developing technology that is being tested in the safest way possible and will go on to save many lives and increase mobility. Earlier this month, PennDOT's Driver and Vehicle Services made it possible for Pennsylvanians to obtain a Real ID compliant driver's license. Getting a Real ID is optional for residents. However, beginning October 1st of 2020, Pennsylvanians will need a Real ID compliant driver's license, photo ID card, or another form of federally acceptable identification to board a domestic commercial flight or enter a federal or military building that requires ID. Please visit our PennDOT website at dmv.pa.gov for more information. Before we get into the question and answer forum, I would like to say how proud I am of the good work done by our great staff at the Department of Transportation throughout Pennsylvania. Our folks are genuinely dedicated to the work they do to improve our transportation system. However, the transportation effort in Pennsylvania is not exclusive to PennDOT alone. We rely on the support and expertise of our many partners across the state. We have 24 regional planning partners who keep us connected to your communities. We also collaborate with a vast number of transportation stakeholders, such as our elected officials, municipalities, interest groups, transportation authorities, and other transportation advocates. A big thank you to all of you for your dedicated service. And now we want to hear from our customers. Let's open the question and answers portion of the meeting. Please remember to try to focus your questions tonight on the upcoming update of the 2021 12-year program. We want to hear about your transportation issues, concerns, or even your ideas to make Pennsylvania's transportation infrastructure work better for you. All you need to do is click Ask a Question if you are on the webinar, or leave a comment if you are on Facebook Live. Please include your name, where you are from, and your question or concern. We will respond to as many of your questions as we can until 7:30 tonight. If your question is not answered tonight, please look for all questions and answers to be posted at a later date on talkpatransportation.com. I'm sure there are some questions ready to go, Aaron, please share our first question for tonight.
And just a couple of reminders as we jump in. As Secretary Richards said, we'll take questions throughout, and anyone who doesn't receive a response tonight will receive a response. They'll be posted on the website. We have taken questions in advance, and we have several questions that have come in through the Facebook Live, so we'll be going through a series of questions here. So please continue to send them in through this Q&A period, but we do have some ready. We have received several questions from customers that were very specific to certain projects, whether they're planned or ongoing. So I just wanted to let our participants know that they can go to projects.penndot.gov and they can see our planned projects. They can see what we project to start this year or we have ongoing. And that'll help people out like Mary, who asked about a specific project in her region. So again, projects.penndot.gov, and you can find a lot of information there. But related to projects, we had a question from Brian in South Central Pennsylvania, and maybe Deputy Ritzman, you could speak a little bit to, he was asking about widening and how much we're able to add what we call capacity or be widening roadways right now.
Good question. If you look back historically, it's probably been about 6 iterations of 12-year programs. So about 12 years ago was the last time we had significant widening occurring in our fiscally constrained transportation improvement program, or even our 12-year program, either the 4 years or the 12-year period. One of the reasons is because we are just in such dire need to repair the existing infrastructure that we do have. We have miles and miles of interstate that need to be reconstructed. If you think about it, a 4-lane going to a 6-lane, just from that perspective, it goes up by another 35% cost just because of the additional lane widths, materials, all that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't say that we're against widening, but because of finances, we're very limited on that new capacity that we create. You'll see it occasionally. We do have some widening projects. If you want to know that it's coming, typically our technique is to widen the bridges in advance of a widening project. So we're doing that at a couple places this year, but it's very, very limited.
We've had several advanced questions and continuing through the meeting, variations of bicycling and pedestrian accommodations. We have a lot of people tuning in from Erie, Lebanon, other areas of the state who have different angles on the question of how we are accommodating these different modes. So I'll give a couple of examples, and please feel free to elaborate on some of these examples because it is a big focus and there's a lot of angles to cover. So, for example, we have a question about how we educate the public on perceptions of these accommodations, that it's good for everyone and not, a hindrance on other motorists. Another angle is, Ross in South Central PA is asking about the specific infrastructure for bicyclists, what we're doing and evaluating those. Pat from Lebanon is asking about how we're educating municipal officials on incorporating these into projects. So, Secretary Richards, if you can talk about our bicycling pedestrian efforts.
First of all, we're very interested in making sure that people have mobility options and they can travel in the way that they choose throughout the Commonwealth, wherever they live. I'm very interested in these issues. I would like also to point out that I'm the chair of the National Active Transportation Council, where I get to discuss with the secretaries across the country as well as other stakeholders on what they're doing and how Pennsylvania can best provide safe bicycle options as well as pedestrian options. Just today I spoke to Roy Godey, our bike ped coordinator here at PennDOT, and we are working on the next iteration of our bicycle and pedestrian safety plan as well. It was last completed a little over 10 years ago. PennDOT Connects has discussions at the beginning of every program, every planned project going forward to see what's important in that community about again, the desire to bike and walk and walkability in that community, as well as what access points, what trail connections need to be made. We're doing everything we can here in Pennsylvania, again, to give people mobility options and make sure that all of those options are always safe. We're hearing a lot from our bicycle community. I'm glad that you're out there tonight, and please encourage everybody to submit their comments and their concerns throughout this process. I know that we will be looking very carefully, particularly about bicycle and pedestrian concerns, and we look forward to incorporating them into our overall plan.
If I can add a little bit, the one thing I'd want to say is at the federal level, there has been funding through either a transportation enhancement or a transportation alternative program for quite a number of years, and I think we've been very, very successful in leveraging those resources. But again, falling back to Act 89, there were two specific categories of funding that really opened the door for a more consistent and a more dedicated funding stream to advance those kinds of projects, bicycle and pedestrians, other safety improvement projects through the multimodal transportation funds, both from PennDOT as well as the Department of Community and Economic Development. And I think the thing that really helps is knowing that each year there's a dedicated funding stream, where the federal programs were a little bit more hit or miss, or every couple years there would be a program. Now with that consistent stream, communities, advocates can really plan on and coalesce around particular projects to advance.
Commissioner Corey, we are obviously a very responsive agency. People can get information from us at a lot of points during the year, and a lot of participation in projects is ongoing. Why do we go through this process specifically every 2 years? It seems like maybe a longer duration of what people might be used to with transportation planning.
Well, typically when you think of planning tends to be a long-term process. But in the transportation arena, things change quickly. Funding changes, our needs change, priorities change, and it's important for us to get updates more frequently than every 10 years so that we can keep up with the needs of our changing transportation environment. So it's important for us, while we have 12-year programs and 4-year periods within the 12-year program, it's important on a pretty consistently fast basis to get updates from our customers on what the needs out there really are, so that we can react in a more timely fashion.
We had a question from Facebook from Jordan, and they're asking, why is funding in jeopardy if transportation is so vital? And I'm sorry, Eddie from Bellefonte is also asking how they can encourage their local leaders to make this a priority.
Sure. Thank you for asking that question. Everyone is in agreement that transportation is important. We know how it's tied to economic development, to the quality of life. It's a reason why people choose to live where they do, to work where they do, for employers to locate their businesses. Transportation is truly a part of everyone's everyday life. And we want to make sure that it's the best that it can be here in Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, not everyone always agrees on how to fund it. For instance, back in 2013, when we were looking at how we were going to pass a state transportation bill, the study that looked at all of our needs showed and estimated that we would need $7.2 billion a year by 2020, which is just next year, to keep our transportation as it exists now in a state of good repair, to maintain it, to preserve it, and to make sure that it is in the condition that it should be kept in. And with the passage of our State Transportation Bill, Act 89, in 2013, we're grateful that we were able to get an additional $2.5 billion a year. But obviously, $2.5 billion is much less than $7.2 billion. So every year, we have not been able to invest the amount needed to keep up with the number of miles that we construct, to keep up with the number of bridges that we need to rehab or replace, to keep up with building additional assets and making investments in our interstates, to make sure that we help our local partners with the bridges and the roads that they maintain as well. And also remember that this money has to go to all the modes, including ports and aviation, freight, including freight rail and passenger rail, as well as helping the trucking community move the goods and services that they need to move around the state. So there's a lot of needs to keep everybody moving and goods as well as people moving around. We also have to invest in transit. I'm always reminding everyone that transportation and PennDOT is about moving as many people as possible and as safely and efficiently as possible. It's not about moving vehicles. And we know we need to invest in transit to make that happen as well, and to make our transportation network function in the best way that it can function. And so we have to make, priorities. We don't have enough money when it's measured up against our needs. I go to D.C. Quite often with my colleagues around the country to let them know where our needs are and how the federal government, if they would step up and help us with the Highway Trust Fund and other funding needs, how that would be so important to us here in the state. So what you can do is think about how transportation is important to you. Legislators love to hear individual stories, whether it impacts how you get around, how you are able to move around on your daily commuting, get around on the weekends for your family, how you are able to get to work, how you are able to operate your business. Let them know what that means to you and how a greater investment would give you more options. For instance, more investment in transit would allow us to upgrade Amtrak. It would allow us to increase the frequency of people traveling from Philadelphia to Harrisburg or from Pittsburgh to Harrisburg. It would allow us to add more cars and get more people on those transportation routes. It would allow us to make upgrades that would allow us to increase speed so that train travel would be faster than other modes of travel. Would help us, add to bus routes. Again, giving people more options. Those who need and would like transit accessibility, we could improve those routes, and we could also invest in our interstates to make sure that trucks as well as passenger vehicles, as well on our low-volume roads and some of our rural roadways, are kept in a good state so everyone travels as efficiently and safely as possible.
You actually segue well into another topic we've had a lot of questions about, which relates to rail service. And everyone from Tyler in Northeast PA to Valerie in Western Pennsylvania, they're asking about increased service of existing services, as well as restoring things like the Lackawanna Cutoff and other types of things people have been asking for. Can you elaborate on where things stand with rail service in Pennsylvania?
I would love nothing better than to be able to report that we can move forward with all of those ideas that were just mentioned in this question. I'm a huge advocate for rail. I think it's a wonderful, safe way to travel. I think I'm a huge fan of taking the train myself, and we would love to be able to expand that type of service. Unfortunately, we don't have the money to do so. Train travel requires large investments. Train travel has been invested in the United States for quite some time. If you think about train travel in Europe, if you think about high-speed train travel that is available in other countries, the United States has a long way to go. And it is my hope that the federal government recognizes this. Train travel requires national investment. It requires federal help. It's not something that a state can do alone. And so we talk frequently with FRA. I recently testified in front of the U.S. Senate Banking Committee where transit decisions are made, where transit funding and infrastructure concerns are heard. And again, legislation comes out of that committee. And I was able to speak with other colleagues from across the country and highlight the concerns here in Pennsylvania. I know the Lackawanna cutoff was brought up in that question. We would love to see more travel from Pennsylvania into New York, into northeastern Pennsylvania, and give people those options. But again, we need large investments. So please let us know where you would like to see those investments. I personally will take them to D.C., let the FRA, let the U.S. Senate Banking Committee know where these needs are. Our Senate representatives in D.C. as well as our House representatives have asked for stories, and you can obviously give them information directly. You can give it through PennDOT as well. We are in constant communication with them to give them the best picture of Pennsylvania's needs, where we would like to see investment, where we would like to continue to study and see where our best options are for expanding our rail network.
Deputy Ritzman, we have a question from Bob in Reading, and he talks a little bit about PennDOT's highway investment strategy seeming to be, in his perception, geared toward major highways. Can you talk a bit about PennDOT and how we work with smaller communities, our local municipal partners, on everything from how to manage projects, but also all the ways we partner with them?
Right. Good question. The first thing I'd say is he hits the nail on the head. One of the reasons why I say that is because we really do focus on a lot of our districts call it the trunk of the tree. Those main arteries that carry the most traffic are most integral to our economy. So those are a priority. Not to say that there aren't other priorities, that all roads aren't considered, but that is a very important piece. When you look at communities, there are a number of ways that we can address those kinds of issues. For instance, again, the Secretary talked about PennDOT Connects. Before we decide what an investment on a particular project, what a scope of work should be, we have a conversation with that community to make sure we understand their needs and their vision. At those conversations where it might start with a particular project in mind, the conversation could go to an awful lot of other topics, an awful lot of other locations. There are an awful lot of different flavors of federal funding in particular that are used and bucketed into different programs, different areas. So well, I talked about, for instance, the interstates being a priority and why they need to be a priority for us. It does not, that's only one flavor of the federal funds typically that are used for that. So there are a lot of other transportation alternatives funding, surface transportation funding that can be utilized for many other roadways. We also have then the lower volume roads are more focused with our maintenance dollars, resurfacing kind of projects rather than the larger capital projects that we typically think might be included in a transportation improvement program like this 21 program update.
Jen from Harrisburg is asking, what's the best way for people to get involved in transportation planning, and how can we find out about planning activities in our region? Commissioner Corey, if you want to speak to that.
PennDOT works very closely with what we call our planning partners, the metropolitan planning organizations and the rural planning organizations throughout the state. I would encourage anybody who's interested in transportation issues to contact their local MPO or RPO and get involved through them, because I think that's the easiest and quickest way to get input directly to the department.
We had a question, looks like from a PennDOT employee from the Indiana-based district, asking about how automated vehicles, it seems to be very discussed in an urban type of context, but how this future can affect transportation safety in smaller communities in the future.
Sure. We're very proud to be seen as national leaders in automated and connected vehicle technology. We mentioned earlier that 94% of crashes and fatalities have been attributed to human distraction. We know that this emerging technology is going to help us reduce that number significantly. But there still are, a lot of unknowns, and we know that other issues are being worked on, and we are enjoying being part of that conversation. We know that automated and connected vehicle technology is coming. It's not an if, it's a matter of when. And we're happy to be at those tables where important decisions are being made and making sure that safety is at the forefront. Automated and connected vehicle technology have many ways where they can be implemented. We're looking in construction zones. We're looking in our work zones to keep our workers safer. We're making sure that our crash vehicles, if appropriate, can be automated so that we don't have to have a driver in that seat or risk human safety when we are protecting the work that's being done. We are looking at implications in urban areas. We have testing going on right now. But we know in our rural areas where there aren't a lot of different mobility options sometimes, we know that getting around can be challenging. And we know that automated and connected vehicle technology will also allow those residents to get around their areas. For instance, if right now we have shared ride-share services, and in rural areas it's a little more difficult. When we have automated and connected vehicle technology, we'll be able to have automated cars come out and drive those roadways and drive them safely. So we know that it's going to provide mobility options. It's not just for one area versus another. In some longer stretches, we may even see earlier adaptation because it may be easier for those vehicles as the technology develops to travel on those types of rural routes. But it's being tested in many, many states in rural, suburban, and urban settings. And as the technology becomes safer to stand on its own, right now we're at what we would call a level 3 automated vehicle, and a level 5 will be when a completely automated vehicle is safe and comes to pick you up without a driver in the car. We have a long way to go, but we are moving forward. We work very closely with our testers, and we're eager to see this technology available everywhere. Again, not just in urban areas. We are working with Penn State and the Turnpike and Federal Highway for a testing facility out in the State College area. Obviously, that will be in a rural area, and we will see how we test this technology with freight movements, with trucks. For instance, platooning, how trucks can follow each other. We know closely and safely and get goods to where they need to be. And we know that these type of testing and these type of uses will be in our rural areas as well. So stay tuned. Keep on track of what we're doing through our websites here. We look forward to educating you as we make milestones and we reach certain advancements to make sure, again, that this very promising technology in terms of safety, efficiency, and mobility, we're on that journey together and very much looking forward to it.
Before you ask another question, can I go back to Bob from Reading? So I was rehashing what I said previously, and I think I left a bad impression. Primarily, I was talking about the interstate funding. One of the things that Commissioner Corey pointed out was to get involved at your MPO or RPO level. There are 24 separate MPOs and RPOs across the state. Some of them are rural, some of them are urban, some of them are a combination. But those regions have a very, very strong responsibility in collaborating with the department to identify what projects should be advanced. So it's not just only the criteria that the busiest roads get the attention. That's an important factor, but there are so many other factors that go into those projects that get advanced through the process. And it is definitely important to have the collaboration at a metropolitan planning organization or rural planning organization level to advocate for their priorities.
As a former Township Planning Commission member, I also encourage people to get active at their township level. It's where I started, and it's very interesting to see how your township or your borough planning commission looks at concerns and makes decisions as well. And those public meetings, input is always valued and really important and helpful in helping guide the development of the area where you live in, your community, your neighborhood.
We have a question from Andy in the Lehigh Valley, and he's talking about economic development and how we're looking at transportation and logistics jobs along with highway capacity and increased freight. And I know that we have our own freight report that said that in 2011, where you saw 10 trucks, by 2040 you'll see 17. So we're actively looking at this. Now, while Andy is asking about a specific roadway project, can you talk about how we are looking at these continuing trends with logistics and transportation and our impact to the roadways?
Sure. We hosted our first ever Freight Summit last year, where we gathered a variety of stakeholders. It was a well-attended event, in fact, standing room only. We had truckers, we had distribution centers represented there as well. We had smaller businesses. We held it in the Lehigh Valley because we're seeing a lot of warehouses and distribution centers being built along our roadways, things that we did not plan for 5-10 years ago. In this economy where people expect to pick up their phone, call and order, or through their phone, order something and have it appear at their doorstep, 24 hours or less afterwards, everyone's roadway becomes part of our freight plan. And we're seeing box trucks and trucks in areas that we haven't seen before. Obviously, this has some wear and tear on our roadways, but we're also trying to help guide the development so that it can also be as efficient as possible and allow for freight movements and make sure that, again, that the goods are being stored in areas that can easily be accessed and then delivered in the areas where they need to be. We know we are going to see a dramatic increase in freight traffic, as you mentioned, Aaron, and we need to be prepared. So we're working very closely with the MPOs and RPOs. We're working with the trucking community. We're working with large businesses such as FedEx and Amazon to see what their needs are and where they anticipate the freight movements being, where they're having issues, where congestion is a problem. And we are investing, as I mentioned before, in automated and connected vehicle technology to make sure that we also are getting ready for platooning for freight movements that can be using this type of emerging technology and improving and the efficiency of the goods that are being transported. In addition, I don't want to leave out, our ports are a very important part of our freight network, as well as our rail and how we move, goods around the state, and that is also part of our freight plan. So we do plan to have a future freight summit, and where those, recommendations can be gathered and making sure that our transportation works for everybody, including freight.
We had a couple of comments about safety considerations, and as we're running short on time, I wanted to let the participants like Lori in the Lehigh Valley know that you can check out the performance report that we reviewed, and that has some more specifics on our safety efforts there. Wanted to allow Commissioner Corey and probably Deputy Rissman to speak a bit to how evolution of environmental impacts in our transportation planning has occurred. How has that changed? If it has, how are we accounting for environmental impacts and planning in our transportation planning? And that is a question from Dan.
It's been a while since I had to deal with environmental impact statements. So my response is going to be a little dated, and I'll have to turn it over to Jim. But we, PennDOT, are keenly interested in maintaining the environment, and environmental impact statements and our relationships with the environmental resource agencies is key to us getting our projects both approved and making sure that they're responsible projects. Just in my career, I saw a major increase in the influence of environmental planning in our projects. And so I would say, as far as the evolution goes, it's only getting greater. It's certainly not getting any less. And I would think that whole notion of environmental stewardship and responsibility would be something that we would continue into the future.
Yeah. I know we don't have much time, so I'll try to cut to the chase on my comments. I think one of the things that really has been a stark transition over the last few years has been the focus on extreme weather, the impacts. Again, this past year, $125 million of damage because of weather events. What that implementation or implication is to how we assess vulnerable infrastructure. So that whole thought process of making sure that the infrastructure that we do have is resilient. Whenever we see something that's repeatedly damaged, means we're not doing a good enough job to take care of the engineering required to really make sure those investments are last. So thank you. It's a great question.
That concludes our Q&A for the evening. So Secretary Richards, if you can wrap up tonight's meeting.
Absolutely. Just to relate to that last question as well, just want to assure everybody that environmental concerns and safety concerns are at the forefront, of everything we do, from wetlands mitigation to air quality issues, to making sure that we're using the best materials for the locations where we use them. They are part of every decision that we make. And while we have to close the question and answers at this time for this event, I want to encourage everybody to continue to share your comments through the online survey available now on the STC website. Surveys will be accepted through April 26th. Even if you've participated today, we still would like you to complete the survey. We also want to let you know that a full recording of tonight's meeting will be available on the website in a few days. You can also help us to share the survey on your social networks with the hashtag TalkPA12Year. When the comment period closes, we will collect the feedback and provide a summary to our commissioners, planning partners, and PennDOT. The survey results will also be posted on the website for public service. We want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. Allow us to do our jobs best, and we can do it best when we hear from you. We truly are interested in all of your comments and feedback. So thanks so much for helping us help you, and we look forward to planning for Pennsylvania's transportation future. Thank you.